factions amongst the global elite who want different things, I've been told. One faction follows Lucifer to the word and supports our evolution on their terms, while another faction is more reluctant and wants to stop our development. The latter faction is the one which doesn't have all the information and doesn't understand why they would support our progress. They see it as a threat. As we've come to understand, all knowledge is on a need-to-know basis amongst the global elite. There are entire countries that are run by regime who don't want people evolved. And there are factions within the US government that think the same thing. This is partly why we see so many contradictions on this subject and a lot of infighting. It is okay to take a look at this from a distance and learn what is going on. In fact, it's crucial for our survival, but it's no longer our job and never was our job to participate in any of it. Most important, it really isn't our war, and trying to participate in it, even if it's just by demonstrating outside Washington, D.C., only makes it worse. The only way for us to win the war is to drop our weapons and walk away from the battlefield, as I have suggested at least a couple of times so far in my levels of learning. A real soldier knows when it's time to stop fighting. In previous discussions in other levels of learning, we discussed that the best way out of this mess is to 1. Learn about it, 2. Disagree with it on a soul level, and 3. Walk away from it and create our lives the way we, as individuals and/or smaller groups, want it. This, of course, is not accomplished within the blink of an eye, but it can be done as long as we are determined to accomplish it. However, there could potentially be a bump on the road which we have to overcome, something the gods may have set up in order to make sure of their ownership of us. As I said, this is not our war, but is it our freedom? The following is an idea I came across recently. It may or may not have an effect on our future. At least I want to mention it. If you, the reader, think that you have a lot of time on your hands all of a sudden, why not start studying the US patent law? Sound boring? Well, it doesn't have to be. You would probably be amazed about what people and organizations have patented. Some of it seems just ludicrous, but some of these patents are scary, to say the least. Particularly those which pertain to cloning and genetic tinkering. Some time ago, I listened to an interview with author and researcher, Dr. Joseph Farrell, on Coast to Coast, from April 20, 2011, when he was interviewed by George Noory concerning his new book at the time, Genes, Giants, Monsters, and Men. Almost half an hour into the interview, they started discussing the U.S. patent law in relation to the Annunaki. Farrell, after researching this subject, had come to the following conclusions. Under patent law, the invention 1, must be able to be duplicated by the hand of man, 2, cannot arise in nature, and 3, it must have had the hand of man in the invention, so that it can be patentable. If we look at and apply these three concepts, Farrell says, the creation of mankind could definitely be patent awarded. Mankind was created by Enki and his scientists, hence, mankind can be created again by someone who follows the exact steps. Also, mankind cannot arise in nature, and that's where the hand of man is in the creation. This, Farrell says, indicates that mankind is, hypothetically, intellectual property of the creator gods. He further speculates that if the gods would come back, how would they implement this? In other words, if their intentions were such, would they be able, under current patent laws, to claim humanity as their property? I believe Dr. Farrell has only looked into U.S. patent law, but I would presume that they are similar in other countries. Could it actually be that the alien invader force, AIF, for short, has taken into consideration that they need to be protected by planetary laws in order to defend their rights over us in, let's say, an Orion court? It doesn't really matter if these patent laws are coincidental in this regard or not, because if we humans can see that they can be implemented this way, the AIF can as well, and why not take advantage of it? Then, as Farrell is careful to point out, we have the fact that it's not only the sovereignty of mankind that is at stake here, but maybe all, or at least most, life on this planet. First, the AIF allegedly used a lot of animal genes in their experiments as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that all these animal genes ended up in Homo sapiens sapiens, but they were created, and if that can be proven, the animals, too, belong to the gods, at least to a certain degree. This is more or less where Farrell ends his discussion, and he leaves the rest for the listener to reflect on. If we then look in modern times, we can see what the gods did in ancient times concerning genetic engineering and manipulation. We are currently trying to do the same thing, and the patent laws are such that it's not a problem to obtain a patent on what they're doing. Here's a thought, however, that I've had that may save mankind from being patented. When it comes to new discoveries on how to clone or create new species, much of that may be governed under current patent laws and can therefore be patented, but when we're talking about ancient genetic engineering of mankind or other species, as mentioned in the ancient texts, these techniques may actually not be allowed patent awards, as mentioned under the novelty, newness, requirement patent law, which says, in order for an invention to be patentable, it must be new as defined in the patent law. This novelty requirement states that an invention cannot be patented if certain public disclosures of the invention have been made. The statute which explains when a public disclosure has been made, 35 U.S.C. Section 102, is complicated and often requires a detailed analysis of the facts and the law. The most important rule, however, is that an invention will not normally be patentable if the invention was known to the public before it was invented by the individual seeking patent protection. The invention was described in a publication more than 1 year prior to the filing date, or the invention was used publicly, or offered for sale to the public more than 1 year prior to the filing date. One of the most important lessons to learn from this requirement is that there is a 1-year period after the first public disclosure or offer for sale of an invention during which a patent application must be filed. This statutory bar is unforgiving, which means that an inventor who does not file for patent protection on her new invention within this 1-year grace period will lose all right to obtain patent protection on the invention. In fact, it may be that by simply explaining your invention to friends and coworkers without any obligation of confidentiality, you may have started the ticking of this 1-year clock. Although the United States grants the 1-year grace period described in the last 2 rules above, most other countries do not grant such a period. Therefore, it is almost always preferable to file a patent application before any public disclosure of the invention. Most patent attorneys will try diligently to file a patent application prior to any public release or announcement in order to allow international patent filings. We learn here that an invention must be new, which it was at the time it was implemented here on Earth, but the first thing that sticks out, being in humanity's favor, is that public disclosures of the invention have been made both in present time, and through the old, Sumerian texts. However, in this particular patent law, it's also added that these requirements can be quite complicated, and I am not familiar with all the clauses. Anyway, if we look at the 3 bullet points included in this section of the law, we may get some ideas of how this works. In bullet point number 1 it states that the person who is seeking the patent must not have disclosed the invention to the public beforehand. In fact, via the ancient text, we do know about it. This is taking into consideration that Enki, for example, would seek a patent award today, as we must assume that he didn't do it in ancient days, although we can't be totally sure about that. Bullet point number 2 follows the same argument. It's been described in publications more than 1 year before the filing date. Bullet point number 3 is concerned with the application of the invention, which is perhaps the most important point here. This is obvious, and if this point is an important one, then Enki and his scientists can't be awarded a patent from what I can see. Then again, there may be more to this, and put into a broader context, my argument may fall flat. Beneath the bullet points, there is another interesting statement, however, which I emphasized in italics: an inventor who does not file for patent protection on her new invention within this 1-year grace period will lose all right to obtain patent protection on the invention. Thus, As I see it, if Enki, Isis, or Ereshkigal did not file for patent award within 1 year grace period, they lost the right to the patent. Therefore, hopefully, these few points may protect us from a lawful ownership of our bodies. The patents may, after all, be customized to our current time period, which would justify human cloning to a certain degree but, perhaps, not AIF ownership. It may sound ridiculous to assume that Enki and his team had something similar to patent awards within our ancient society, but we shouldn't take that for granted. We humans were the ones who were not advanced the AIF were, and they may or may not have had such laws in effect in ancient times. I am only bringing all this up because this is something the AIF hypothetically might want to implement on us in the future, but I would imagine only if everything else doesn't work. I am personally not too worried about the patent hypothesis. I am more concerned about their usual tactics, which is deception through manipulation. However, I still want to leave the door open for this possibility. You never know.